Hello, everybody.
Hey there, how are you?
I'm doing all right, thanks.
Good. Hey there.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hey, Jisoo.
Hi, Megan. We're going to give everyone a few minutes. I guess this will right on time, but I know Rob Bettina will be joining us as well.
Well, welcome everybody. It's 1:01. This is the Corporate Engagement Committee meeting for the Illinois Innovation Network, the November meeting. I normally give everyone a little more time to log in, but we got a pretty strict agenda today, and our featured speaker, Megan Puzey, is, and I hope I pronounced that right.
Tuesday, but that's okay. I hear everything.
Okay, is here. She was unfortunately not well last week or last month, but she's here today, and we want to thank her for her time. And we'll give the floor over to you for the next 20 minutes. Okay.
Sure, I'll just put my presentation up and get rolling. And I'm fairly informal, so people can ask questions along the way. I may not be able to see the chat because I got multiple monitors going, but feel free to interrupt and ask questions. And hopefully, Rob, if there's time at the end, or I can always, people can reach out to me directly after. So let me get myself going here. All right, hopefully you can all see a PowerPoint. All right, so I'm just going to jump right in here and go to sort of a little bit about me. I know I've met several of you, either in person or through this committee, and there's many of you I haven't. So I want to just give a little bit of an overview about who I am and my role with NACRO, which is a lot of what I'm going to talk about today, because I know that's of interest and kind of understanding, what's out there to help support corporate relations and academic industry relations. So I'm currently a director of operations in the Office of Corporate Relations at the Urbana, campus, UIUC campus. I've been in the office for about 14 years, and my portfolio of companies has kind of ebbed and flowed and changed over the number of years, but I'm currently working in the space of defense, manufacturing, transportation, and IT. So it's a pretty broad portfolio, and I've had other kinds of companies in there in the past, but this is what I'm working on right now. I also have a reporting line for all of our administrative kind of staff, as well as the sort of data research, CRM, sort of the operations internal kind of folks report to me within the office. And I'll talk a little bit about the office in a second. In addition, I also have several sort of hats I wear across campus, helping out with the campus community, including the Corporate Relations Network, which I will talk about, sort of a CRM visioning that we did several years ago, the Career Services Council. I sit on that on behalf of my office, and some as well as other things. In terms of NACRO, which is the Network for Academic Corporate Relations Officers, I know several of you are probably members or have been members in the past, or if you're not, I'll try to sell you as I go through the presentation here. But I'm actually a past president. I'm no longer on the board. I rolled off the board in July. It was a very exciting day because I'd been on the board for 5 years straight, but really enjoy the organization in that board, but I've also been involved in several different committees. Most prominently would be the conference programming committee, which I sort of managed and coordinated for 2 years for conference. So I want to just start a little bit with sort of corporate relations at UIUC, a little bit about how we're structured. This is a quick overview of my office, of the Office of Corporate Relations. A lot of you might know Pradeep Khanna, who sits on other IIN and various committees across the campus and the system. He leads corporate relations. We report to the Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation at UIUC. And as you can see, there's 4 of us in the office that are what we consider strategic relationship managers. So that's myself, Catherine, Stephanie, and Pedro. And we break down our industry portfolio, or portfolios by industry. So, I mentioned mine earlier. Catherine handles food and ag. Stephanie has a lot of, sort of consulting, financial relationships. And then Pedro fills in with chemical materials, energy, and some other sort of consumer goods kinds of companies. We also have a fairly robust staff for a corporate relations office. From what I've learned in NACRO, not everybody gets more than maybe one person, and a lot of you might be in a one-person shop. So we might be a little unique in that way, but I did want to highlight some of the areas that we have, just because we are available to help people and support people across the campus here at UIUC, as well as the system. And then, of course, we're always here and open to talk about some best practices with others and other universities. So we have sort of what I would consider the external facing crowd, which is our stewardship and marketing and communications team. And then I kind of already mentioned the folks that report to me, which is research data and our CRM Salesforce team, as well as our administrative staff. So trying to move quickly here, the corporate relations network is sort of a best practice I did want to talk about today, in terms of, something that some of you might be able to think about or adopt across your university or your campus. We utilized a similar model over several years, pretty much the entire time I've been in the office. It's ebbed and flowed a little bit, and we relaunched it in 2020 as the Corporate Relations Network. And as you can see, it's 25 campus units are involved in this. So it's everything from DIA to sponsored programs and tech transfer to advancement, and everyone within the units that is working in corporate engagement. They're all, it's open and available to join. I'm looking at Marissa and wondering if she is part of it, and I want to make sure she is if she's not. So we're very open, we're very broad with this. I said almost 60 members, but it can grow and shrink as people want to be involved in it. So it's quite open. And I just want to talk a little bit also about how we think about corporate engagement. And not every unit within our corporate relations network, or all of you, will have the same kinds of structures and sort of protocols, but this is how we think about it at UIUC, just because we want to, in some ways, categorize things so we can be consistent and be able to share easily with companies the kinds of ways they can engage, but also just to keep ourselves organized and to think about these buckets of things that companies want to do. We've learned a lot over the years. We actually used to have 7. We've combined a couple because some can be very closely related. And a lot of our most strategic companies are working in most of these areas. Not everybody will have a presence in our research part, but they may be working in the other 5 areas. They may, start with sort of small projects within student engagements. They may be doing, just recruiting. And then as we think about how we can be more strategic with the companies, we try to move them throughout these various different kinds of categories and really grow their relationship. And a lot of times companies, as you might all know, don't know where to start, don't know how to engage. And this is also a way to kind of help them think about it and sort of categorize themselves on how they might want to, interact with the campus. I'm not going to read all these, but I can share slides later if this is of interest to people. This just talks a little bit more kind of about this process and how we think about this process. This is actually an older chart that I brought out specifically for this, because it shows that I'm not one individual person that's going to manage every single thing a company can do by myself, right? In my office, we're considered connectors, we're considered liaisons, concierges is a word we hear a lot. Really just being a point person for the company and then helping them navigate the campus. So each of the categories you see, this is like I said, it was an old chart. So this is before we combine targeted solutions and research and some of those things together, but it really shows how important the whole campus is in the corporate engagement in academic industry relations, right? So Obviously, faculty and deans, you can't really do much without faculty. You can't really do much without the leadership of deans and department heads. But each one of these kind of categories really does have a broad team behind it that helps execute the programs. You know, a company can be doing something, you know, just recruiting, and it's fairly straightforward with career services. But as we try to grow those relationships, it broadens across the campus. All right. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, I want to talk about another best practice or another way we think about how to engage with companies. And that's really how we can be more, not only answer to the companies and their needs, but let them know what's going on with their relationship. And there's a lot of different ways we do that. We have, you know, like I sort of mentioned the team earlier, we have this group within my office that can help really pull together information about the company, not only for our internal audience within our office, within the campus units, within leadership of the campus and the system, but also to just best understand, you know, what kind of data is out there about the company and what they're doing. We have access to a lot of different resources within our office. I'm happy to talk about any of these individually with any of you later, or connect you with my team that does these things on a day-to-day basis. I know our sort of stewardship and marketing team gives a presentation every year at NACRO and talks about both a conference and what I'm going to talk about later, which is their boot camp, and talks about our stewardship reports, where we're sending out an annual report to our key strategic partners. That's very pretty, very comprehensive. It shows, you know, both sort of hiring and alumni data, it shows research data, it shows special projects they're working on. It really just is a nice key piece for them to understand their relationship with the campus. And, you know, with the campus being so large and the company possibly being very, very large, it's a good way to kind of break all that down into one space and show that to them. You know, our data team, every year we pull together both philanthropic data, research data, tech transfer data, all those kinds of things that companies do with the campus. And we report that. We want to make sure that it's in our annual report, that, you know, sort of the total amount of corporate giving and corporate sort of contracts to the campus. So that's kind of a key thing that we work on, and we're able to kind of help show that process and things like that, if that's of use to anyone here, and then across, of course, colleagues that we meet at NACRO. All right. So that's a little bit about UIUC. Again, happy to answer questions, happy to talk about things later and provide these slides and provide any more details. We have lots of examples of our stewardship reports. We have lots of examples of sort of, you know, PowerPoint presentations and things we do. We just created a brand new, and we do a lot of this via flipping book, so it's all online. We just created a new, like, how to engage with Illinois flipping book document that outlines all the colleges, all the ways that companies can engage. And it's a really great tool that people might be able to sort of duplicate and create within their own universities or their own campuses to kind of help companies in one shot click on something and kind of understand ways to engage. And it's, you know, it's not going to go into every single detail about how they would do, you know, something on the tech transfer side, but it's going to talk about, you know, the general overviews of those kinds of things, so that our company reps can understand. Anyway, so like I said, switching gears over to sort of the network side and understanding what's out there, what resources are out there for all of you to tap into. This is a list of available resources that I'm aware of, mostly from my hat with NACRO. NACRO is strategic alliance partners with most of these, NORDP and Autumn and CASE, definitely. Those, depending on where you're coming from within your university or your campus, these may be ones you're already a part of, or ones you're not aware of that you could be a part of, that really help and kind of have the same kinds of, you know, people there will have the same kinds of job responsibilities as you might have, and really be able to learn some best practices and network. NACRO is comprehensive in terms of covering all of the things that we consider important to corporate engagements, as is UIDP. UIDP is maybe a little bit more focused on the research side and works a lot with sort of the sponsored programs teams, and all that are part of it, and a lot of industry engagement there. But I'm most familiar with NACRO, and with that, I wanted to sort of focus on that today, but wanted to give you this list. And I'm sure there's 100 more that you're all aware of. All right, so let me get to my notes here. So NACRO is a network. And if I'd summarize it in one sentence, I'd say it's a group of people working in academic industry engagement roles in one way or another. That can be anything from a tech transfer person to a career services person to someone working on a very specific, you know, research program that wants to understand corporate engagement. Any of those would fit within NACRO. All these folks are going to benefit from sharing best practices. and there's a variety of, professional development opportunities. It's different from a lot of organizations, at least I believe it is, and it's 100% volunteer led. So everything that is done and created and thought about is all coming from people that are working in these roles on a day-to-day basis. The only full-time staff there is really not even a full-time staff. It's sort of logistical help that we pay for and bring in on an annual basis to help us with, conference planning kind of things, board minutes, and all of those kinds of details. The annual conference and online webinars are great, sort of best practices and ways to learn about different kinds of content. And ultimately, being a network, it allows you to meet people. And NACRO, you'll hear a lot, certain little phrases that we use, and one of them is phone a friend, and that's not new to anyone here probably, but I've chatted with several universities in the last few weeks on a variety of different things, just because I've met them through NACRO, gotten to know them. I talked with someone at Wisconsin-Madison about corporate structures about a month ago. I just had a call with a good friend at Washington State about economic development and attracting companies to your state and your community and how you do that. And Maryland is doing some leadership, sort of how to utilize university leadership. So that I had a call with them. So it's really a great organization that helps you connect with those kinds of people. And give them a call and say, what are you doing at your university? And it may not be something you can do exactly, but it gives you advice and it helps you sort of do your day-to-day job. NACRO has about 500 some members. It kind of ebbs and flows. NACRO, kind of suffered a little bit through the pandemic without having an annual conference in person, but we held strong and it's growing again. Membership is not terribly expensive. It's $220, although I hear through the grapevine via Slack today that it may be going up. But I think now that the pandemic's over and they're starting to continue to do a lot of the online webinars and things that they did when there wasn't an in-person conference is worth the value of the membership. So there's a lot of different ways to engage with NACRO. I'll talk about boot camp here in a minute. There's a monthly newsletter which gives all kinds of information about upcoming events and surveys and things that are going out. I know the one that just came out this week had all the information about the upcoming RFP that goes out for annual conference. So actually how the content gets created for the annual conference comes from members. What else do I want to talk about on this page? So there's a lot of different, networking opportunities. I mentioned the newsletter. LinkedIn is very robust. There's thousands of members on the LinkedIn page, even if they're not members of NACRO. There's affinity groups that mostly operate during conference where you can kind of find your people, whether it's regionally or in offices like yours or universities like yours. But they actually just created a new affinity group that's operating kind of within the benchmarking committee, but it's related to folks that are doing data research and sort of CRM related things. They just launched it in the last month or so. And it's really becoming, a way that people that aren't doing the direct day-to-day corporate engagement, sort of strategic relationship management like I am, they can be involved in this organization. I mentioned strategic alliances when I talked earlier about the ones I showed on the one screen, but it's a key part of the membership strategy for NACRO. It's also a key part of the membership strategy for some of those other organizations. So there's a relationship of content creation, content sharing. The alliance with NORDUP, which is the research organization, they're working with us and we're kind of putting some content together around getting it in SF grants. So that's kind of a way to work with those kinds of organizations. Okay, so I was conference programming chair, so I always felt like conference was the best thing we ever did. Of course, I was biased, but the other sort of cornerstone of NACRO is the information sharing and the publications that they put out. There's several that are really, really important and valuable. And I know that we often tell people your first thing to do when you get hired in a corporate engagement or sort of tangential role is to read the 5 essentials of corporate engagement and to go to boot camp and do some of those things. But I just wanted to point out a couple of different things here. I've got some screenshots, but some of these are available online through the publications pages I've got here on the screen. Some are only members only. But the 2 that I'm going to point out today is really related to both the industry side and this sort of 5 essential elements. And both of those are available for everyone on this publications page. The 5 essential elements of successful 21st century university corporate engagement programs really is adaptable. And it's a great way to get just a one-shot understanding about the shifting of corporate engagement from sort of corporations being donors to corporations being investors and partners, and thinking about, they're not just thinking about where they're going to, you know, dump some money. It's really how they can invest in a university and get some ROI from that. The other report I want to point you to is this Industry Perspectives report. That was released in 2019, and they just did an update to it in 2022. It was led by a subcommittee that really focused on getting answers from company representatives. So I sent it out to people, everyone across NACRO sent it out to people, and we really got answers from corporate partners on how they prioritize and set their preferences on how they want to work with universities. It identified 4 specific best practices, which I'm not going to read to you. I'll let you go and read. But we know universities are very complex, and we want to make sure that no matter what lens that we're viewing corporate engagement through, it's to simplify the process, right, for the companies and to make our partners want to work with us. All right, just a couple more quick things, and then I can have a couple minutes of questions, Rob, if that's okay, and then I'll wrap up if anybody has any. So I've talked about conference, and I wanted to mention boot camp again. Boot camp is sort of the first thing people should do, in my opinion, when they start in a corporate engagement role. In addition to reading some of the publications, it's managed by the Professional Development Committee, so it's all the same content every year. They do it twice. They do it virtually, usually now in the winter, which was a COVID change, but they've decided to keep it because people, you know, start their jobs throughout the year and they don't want to wait almost a year sometimes to get the boot camp experience. The one in the summer is always in person. You really get to know people during boot camp, and also get to kind of just get that baseline understanding of NACRO, which is good for a lot of people, and just how sort of they think about holistic corporate relations and sort of the things that you can read about in some of the publications. So it's a great opportunity. If you're sort of new to this and interested in that, I believe there'll be one virtually in February. I don't have a date, but if that changes, I can always let people know. I also real quickly want to just point out the 5 committees. There's 5 major working committees within NACRO. They just did a strategic plan. These may ebb and flow a little bit, but each one of them kind of has its own charge towards the betterment of NACRO and the members. They're pretty self-explanatory, but just wanted to make sure you were all aware, because you can get the most out of the organization by volunteering. All right, and just the last comment I wanted to make is a lot of folks, you know, that maybe step into a corporate engagement role don't necessarily have the opportunity for immediate leadership. NACRO is a way to do that. I have a good NACRO friend from Pitt who always said, I didn't have a single person reporting to me, but I managed a committee at NACRO, and that's helped my career and that's helped me grow. So that's just a way to think about how you can get the best out of this organization and similar organizations, and use these kinds of resources, you know, that are available to you on this sort of industry academic engagement. I also, you know, a lot of people will say, I'll go to NACRO, I'll hear some content, but I can't apply that. And what I always like to say is anything you can do where it's, you know, take one little piece of something, like, you know, I said earlier, our stewardship team always does a presentation. Maybe you can't have a robust, you know, online flipping book, whatever annual report, but you can pull some information from those and kind of understand how you can report to your corporate partners. So I think that's everything I had today. I know I talked fast and went through a lot. Happy to share these slides. Happy to answer any questions, if Rob, if that's okay, if we've got a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could share those slides, I'll make sure they make them available to those that might want them. And I do know this session is being recorded as well, so people can see that. Jen did have one quick question, and if you could answer that. Honestly, I would have probably about 5 of my own, but I think we have to get on to normal business.
Understood. I can answer these in chat if you want to move on to Rob, and I can send a copy of the stewardship report in there too.
Hey, Rob.
Yes.
So I think that we can actually save some time for that IIN update. Kyle won't be able to join this meeting, so I think we can spend some time with Megan to answer the questions.
Okay. So yes, some of the training is available if you're not a member. There's usually a member, non-member price for a lot of the like boot camp and conference. Webinars are often not available outside of members, but sometimes they'll do some that are non-member to kind of encourage people to understand NACRO. There's some webinars coming up this, you know, in the next few months or couple of months that were just announced in a newsletter this week, and all of those were member only. but there's usually member prices and non-member prices for the larger events like the boot camp and conference. And I do have copies of stewardship reports that I'm gonna have to grab grab a link from my team that has ones that are sort of available to be seen. A lot of those are, sort of for companies only, but I've got a couple in my portfolio I'd have no problem sharing with you. So I'll grab those links and put them in the chat here in a minute.
Well, let's see here, there's another message on here.
Yep. I think ultimately companies, some of the biggest trends, I think companies are recognizing their need for, on the student engagement side, doing more than just coming in and recruiting. I think that's a huge trend. We're hearing about it from companies, across the state, across the country that really want access to talent. So we're seeing that at UIUC. That's being a major shift. You can't just come and put up a table and have a line and get as many sort of as much headcount as you think you need and get all your recs filled. The other thing I think really is maybe more on the research side, just things that are shifting towards research is not, the companies that are funding things are doing it for their own ROI. That piece that I kind of talked about at the end there, and sort of that's one of the NACRO white papers, is also that corporate or companies aren't just donating money for the sake of it. It's all related to something they want to do. Whether it's to further research for their benefit, to solve their real world problems, or to hire students to then come in and be full-time employees or interns. So I think those two things are kind of outlined in the NACRO papers, but at least those are two that I would mention quickly.
Okay, very good. Well, it's 26 past the hour. Megan, I want to thank you for the presentation, and I may shoot you some email questions that I have myself.
Sure, no problem.
I feel like we probably should have dedicated more time for your presentation. So,
well, it's fine. And I know I talk really fast, but I wanted to get as much in as possible, and happy to share and happy to be available for anyone.
Understood.